Welcome to all of you. Today I am going to summarize capital gain tax applicable in Sri Lanka. So, capital gain tax in සිංහල ප්‍රාග්ධන ලාභ බදු. කොහොමද අපි capital gain tax එක හදාගන්නේ? So, today I am going to discuss very briefly the theory applicable on capital gain tax as well as the one calculation. And at the same time, I will explain in a summary form all in a whiteboard here. It's screen sharing. So it will discuss main key summary in a mind map format. So it will easy for you to refer capital gain tax, about capital gain tax, imposition, and the cost of asset and consideration, what it is, realization of assets and liabilities, and calculation of gains and losses, right? So first of all, let's look at what is capital gain tax, right? When it is introduced. So, as you all aware, with effective from New Inland Revenue Act, which is introduced on 1st January, 1st April 2018 onward. So, let's say this is capital gain tax. So, this capital gain tax applicable under the Inland Revenue Act, number 24, 2017. This act is effective from, right, with effective from 1st April 2018 onward. So this is effective from 1st of April onward. Prior to that, we didn't have this capital gain tax. After implementation of this Inland Revenue Act only, this is applicable. And also there is another gazette notification, this Inland Revenue Act, I would say as amended, because any amendments are there, also we have to consider, right? And also there's another gazette notification applicable to capital gain tax, which is 2064/59. So this gazette notification also you need to refer, gazette notification 2064/59. So, which is also specify the capital gain tax format and few exemption and so and so. So we'll look at those things later. So how to calculate capital gain tax? It is based on the consideration received and the cost. Then we have to calculate the gain. Usually, if you are aware how to calculate gain on asset, usually, let's say capital gain. How to calculate selling price minus cost. Right? Here, cost, how to take this cost is little bit confusion you are having, right? Because this cost, you have to take it very important point here. We need to take this cost whether such asset purchased prior to, right? If this particular asset purchased prior to 30th September 2017, then if it is purchased prior to 2017 September 30th, right, then you have to do a revaluation here, revaluation as at 30th September 2017, right? If any asset purchased after 30th September 2017, no need to do a revaluation. The same cost can be considered as a cost, right? Same purchase cost we can consider as a cost of the asset, right? Here, this is the key point, right? So any asset purchase prior to 30th September 2017, then you have to do a revaluation as at 30th September 2017. This is not changed. Still we have the same date. No amendment for this, right? So then if any asset purchase, let's say 2020 you purchase one asset, right? Then you can take that particular cost for the asset, right? Then also another important thing, if you have any additional cost if you have any additional expenses attributable to this, then for the selling, right, you can deduct. So what are the additional costs? Usually you are aware, right? So if you want to make advertisement for in order to sell this particular land or the building, right? So advertisement, you can deduct advertisement expenses, right? So you might incur some legal fees. So you might incur some lawyer fees, right? And as well as broker fee, broker fees as well, right? All item විකුණනකොට මොනවා හරි වෙන වියදම් attributable expenses incur වුණා නම් ඔයාලට ඒක අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? In single, if I explain here cost එක ගනිද්දී අනිවාර්යෙන්ම asset එක අරගෙන තියෙන්නේ 2017 සැප්තැම්බර් 30ට කලින්ද පස්සේද කියලා බලන්න. එතකොට asset එක අරන් තියෙන්නේ 30th සැප්තැම්බර් වලට asset එක අරන් තියෙන්නේ 30th සැප්තැම්බර් වලට කලින් නම් අනිවාර්යෙන්ම revaluation එකක් කරන්න ඕන. ඒ revaluation එක කරන්න ඕන 30th සැප්තැම්බර් 2017 වලට ඒ value එකට තමයි ඔයා හදන්නේ. right? එතකොට එහෙම asset එක අරන් තියෙන්නේ පස්සේ දවසක නම් අපි නිකන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට කියමු 2020 කියලා January 1st of January 2020, then no need to do a zero valuation, right? එහෙනම් revalue කරන්න ඕනේ 2020 නම් මොකද 2017ට පස්සේ. එහෙනම් ඔයාලට කෙලින්ම purchase cost එක ගන්න පුළුවන් capital gain එක හොයන්න, right? Hope it's clear to everyone, right? ඉතින් මොන වගේ asset වලද? Then next question is what are the assets subject to this capital gain tax, right? මොනවද asset capital gain tax? ඉතින් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මේක you have to look at whether it is investment asset. Investment asset එකක්ද කියලා බලන්න ඕන. right? Investment asset එකක්ද කියලා බලන්න. Investment asset කියන්නේ මොනවද? Then you have problem. What is called as investment asset? Any capital asset keep as a part of investment, right? ඕනම capital asset එකක් ඔයා investment purpose තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා, right? For capital appreciation purpose, right? ඉදිරියට මිල වැඩි වෙයි කියලා හිතලා විකුණන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ආයෝජනවත්කමක් විදිහට තියාගෙන ඉන්න දෙයක්, right? Land එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, building එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, ගෙයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, whatever the things you purchase and kept it as for capital appreciation purpose, right? So then that can be categorized as investment asset, any capital asset. So here, let's go to the definition as well. මෙතන ආව definition එකට ගියා any capital asset, right? So here we discuss all the things applicable. Then here the gain is calculated, consideration received, consideration in the sense selling price, received, and the cost also we discuss, right? And what is called investment asset? Any capital asset held part of investment or capital asset එක ප්‍රාග්ධනවත්කම ඔයා තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා නම් investment purpose. ඒ කියන්නේ ආයෝජනවත්කමක් විදියට, right? Let's say land එකක් ඔයා purchase කරලා තියෙනවා. Let's say 10 million you have purchased a land and keep for 5 years and selling now 20 million. Then capital appreciation is 10 million, right? So, right? Land, building, membership interest. Membership interest in the sense what? Membership interest in the sense shares. If you are invest in shares, right? So shares, we have two things, right? We need to check whether it is private shares or public shares, PLC shares, right? If it is PLC, this exempt, no capital gain applicable, right? Here, if it is private shares, then yes for capital gain tax applicable, right? Then you have to check this one. Anyway, we'll discuss when we are discussing the exemption asset, the other security and financial asset option or right of interest, those things also. Right here, again, there's an exclusion. Trading stock not applicable for capital gain tax, and depreciable asset, which are used for the business purpose. Depreciable asset කියන්නේ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම business එකට use කරන asset, right? ඒවා අපි capital gain වලට ගන්නෙ නැහැ. ඒක business asset එකක් විදිහට යන්නේ. ඒක liable වෙන්නේ business income, business එකේ තියෙන rate එකට. Capital tax, gain tax නෙමෙයි, right? So here, let's move to the mind map again. Then you have to check whether any asset, any capital asset, those are you kept as part of capital appreciation purpose. So here, any investment held as part of an investment, right? Capital asset, capital asset held as a part of investment, right? Part of investment, right? Any capital asset held as part of investment, yes, it is capital investment asset, right? Capital asset can monad. Then you have a problem. What is called capital asset, right? Then what is mean by capital asset? Again, you have to look at what are the capital asset, right? Capital asset can monad mainly any asset, right? Following asset, land, building, membership, interest, so and so, right? Here you need to remember, right? Capital asset in the sense lands, right? Buildings. මෙතන ලියන්නේ අත්‍යවශ්‍යම ටික විතරයි. Land, building, shares, membership, interest, shares, right? අපි මේ ටික අරගෙන තියෙනවා නම් investment purpose අරගෙන තියෙනවා නම් අපි කියනවා ඒක investment asset එකක් කියලා. right? building එකක් if you keep as investment purpose, yes, it is investment asset. අපි building එකක් අරගෙන rent එකට දෙනවා. නැත්නම් investment purpose අරගෙන තියෙනවා. land එකක් අරගෙන අපි පැත්තකින් තියලා තියෙනවා. කාලයක් ගියහම විකුණන්න බලාගෙන. එහෙම වුණොත් ඒක ඒ land එක investment asset එකක්. shares අරගෙන අපි තියනවා. share වල මිල වැඩි වුණාම විකුණන්න කියලා. Then we can call it as those things as investment asset, right? So here, very important thing, we have to exclude. They have to exclude what? Exclude trading stock. Trading stock. Trading stock. අපි ව්‍යාපාරය ගන්න තොග. අපි ප්‍රාර්ථනාවත්කම් නැත්නම් investment asset එකක් විදිහට ගන්නෙ නැහැ. Right? So trading stock or depreciable asset. Business එකට use කරන asset. Depreciable assets. අපි depreciation applicable assets අපි ගන්නෙ නැහැ. Right? So anyway, we have to exclude that part. Very important, right? Then you have to make sure properly whether you are not taking trading stock and depreciable asset for capital gain tax purpose, right? So then usually the most applicable land, if you purchase building or keep it as a part of investment, and shares, yes, capital gain tax applicable, right? Hope it's clear to everyone. So if you have any questions, you can post a comment on the comment section. ඔයාලට ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා අහන්න පුළුවන් මේ channel එකේ comment section එකේ ඔයාලා ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. Then I can clarify all these things, right? Then I hope you identified the difference between capital asset and investment asset. What are the depreciable asset, right? So if I explain further, right, we can some asset we are using for the business purpose, right? Asset kiwama. Some asset we are using for business purpose. Then if you are using that asset for business purpose, we call it as business asset. In simply, business asset. If you are purchase some asset for investment purposes, right? We can call it as investment asset. Right? So business purpose asset, anyway, you will depreciate, right? You will depreciate, right? Then again, we can call it as depreciable asset, right? Depreciable asset. So investment asset, you are keeping held as a part of investment. You are held as a part of investment, right? You are held as a part of investment. Then you need to be understood two concepts. Whether you are having this asset using for business purpose. Business asset එකක් කියනවා building එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒකේ ව්‍යාපාරයක් කරගෙන යනවා. Right? or land එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ land එකේ ව්‍යාපාරයක් කරගෙන යනවා. Right? investment කියන්නේ ආ land එක අරගෙන තියලා තියෙනවා මොකුත් කරන්නේ නැහැ. Right? Then you are having investment asset. මිල වැඩිනවා විකුණනවා. So right? බිල්ඩින් එකක් තියෙනවා බිල්ඩින් එක බිල්ඩින් එකේ ව්‍යාපාරයක් කරගෙන යනවා කඩයක් කරගෙන යනවා ගාමන්ට් එකක් කරගෙන යනවා right then it will become a business then building එක rent එකට දුන්නොත් then it become a investment asset building එක rent එක දීලා rent income එකක් එන්නේ here there's an active involvement is there මෙතන active එකක් වෙනවා active business එකක් business asset එකක් වෙනන්නේ ඒ business එකට use කරන්න මේ business asset කියන්නේ you have used this asset for the business use for business right here you are using for investment or you might rent in these things rent out right rent it out right or you are keeping for capital appreciation right you are keeping those things for capital appreciation purpose right then you have to properly understand these assets using for what right whether it is for business whether it is for investment right variance then this part applicable for capital gain tax right so this asset applicable for capital gain tax very clear right very clear hope this is very clear right let's look at again to the mind map right so then there are some exemptions excluded items right capital gain tax apply when නැති අවස්ථා තියෙනවා right I will summarize quickly what are those right excluded or exemptions right applicable for capital gain tax right so exclusions so otherwise we can say exemptions applicable for capital gain tax right the first one right principal place of residence in short I will use PPR principal place of residence if you have principal place of residence if you are selling that one right ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයා ජීවත් වෙලා ඉන්න ගේ ඔයා විකුණනවා right if you have in the principal place of residence now you are going to sell that one right if you are selling this one then it is applicable capital gain tax or not right very important මේකට capital gain tax වෙනවද නැද්ද right then if you are selling your principal place of residence or ජීවත් වෙන ගේ විකුණනවා then we have to check whether you have ownership of this asset for 3 years last 3 years ඔයා මෙතන ඉඳන් බලන්න ඕන you will stand over here and will look at the past whether you have ownership for these 3 years right whether you have the ownership for these 3 years right then yes you can say you have the ownership right for 3 years yeah if you have the ownership first condition is satisfied then again you have to check whether you have lived or occupied this premises right or the building or the house right at least minimum 2 years let's say you have occupied for this year and this year as well then at least out of 3 years right out of 3 years you have to stay minimum 2 years 2 years as occupied right if you occupied at least 2 years out of 3 years of the ownership yes then it is exempt right then such capital gain tax is exempt right ඔයාට ownership එක තියෙන අවුරුදු 3ක් ඒ අවුරුදු 3 ඇතුළත right අවුරුදු 3 ඇතුළත at least ඔයා අවුරුදු දෙකක්වත් live වෙලා ඉඳලා තියෙනවා නම් lived out of 3-year ownership right out of 3-year ownership you have lived 2 years right if you live 2 years then it is exempt right අවුරුදු 3ක් ownership එක තියෙන්න ඕන තිබිලා at least අවුරුදු දෙකක් ඒක ජීවත් වෙලා තියෙනවා නම් ඔයාට in that context we can consider it is exempt right we can consider it is exempt then right ownership and lived, occupied 2 years, right? මේ 2 years කියන එක ඔයාට exactly අවුරුදු දෙක මං ඇඳපු විදිහටම වෙන්න ඕනේ. Even in between, somewhere here, or either way. In the last 2 years, you lived over there or reside, occupied, right? ජීවත් වෙලා ඉන්න තියෙන අන්තිම අවුරුදු දෙක. ownership එක තියෙන අවුරුදු තුනම මේ තුන් විදිහටම වෙන්න පුළුවන්, right? So either way, right? Which I already first drawn this 2 years, or in the middle 2 years, or in the last 2 years, right? Then ownership, it should be there for total 3 years, right? Ownership එක අවුරුදු තුනම තියෙන්න ඕන. Then ජීවත් වෙලා ඉන්න ඕන අවුරුදු දෙකක්. If it is so, then මේකේ විකුණනවා නම්, right? If you are selling this particular premises, right, principal price of residence, then this will be exempt. No capital gain tax. වා ජීවත් වෙලා ඉඳපු ගේ විකුණනවා නම් capital gain tax එන්නේ. These days people are selling their houses, then some people purchasing, right? Then ඔයාට සල්ලි වැඩිපුර තියෙනවා, වෙන ගයක් මිලදී ගන්න කවුරු හරි විකුණන එක. Then again you are selling to a, maybe you keep it for some period, let's say 5 months, 6 months, 1 year time. Then you are selling again, right? It is not you are using for the principal place of residence. ඔයාගේ ජීවත් වෙන්න purpose නෙමෙයි. ඔයා අරගෙන අවුරුදු දෙකකින් විකුණනවා ගෙවල් අරගෙන. ගොඩක් if you have the more money, right? Then you will purchase some houses, those who are selling, and keep 1 year or 6 month time they are selling, right? If you are selling like that, then it is not applicable. It is applicable to capital gain tax, right? Or then short term සමහර අය රට යන papers වෙන්න පුළුවන්, or any other purpose, money agent, due to that situation they might be selling, right? Then let's say you are purchasing that particular house 10 million, then now the person 20 million වලට විකුණනවා. Then ඔයාට principal price එකක් තියෙනවානේ. ඉතින් මේක capital gain 10 million, it is subject to capital gain tax, right? But if it is your principal place of residence, ඔයාගේ ජීවත් වෙලා ඉන්න ගෙදර නම් විකුණන්නේ, විකුණන මනුස්සයට tax වෙන්නේ නැහැ, right? It is not applicable, right? Hope it's clear. Right? Then the second one, if you are selling listed shares, right? Listed shares or quoted shares, right? Sale of listed shares. Listed, එහෙම නැත්නම් quoted, නැත්නම් PLC company. I would say PLC, right? PLC shares. Right? If you are selling PLC shares, listed shares, it is exempt, right? Because government want to encourage people to purchase shares on Colombo Stock Exchange, right? Then the people will purchase those things and sell them, then they will get a gain, right? So those gains are not subject to capital gain tax, right? So capital, the shares අරගෙන buy කරලා විකුණනවා නම් capital gain tax එන්නේ නැහැ, right? Shares අරගෙන. එතකොට ඔයා බලන්න ඕන whether that particular share is private, right? Gain from sale of shares, right? Then බලන්න ඕන whether it is PLC, listed shares, or private shares, private company shares, right? If it is listed, then you might purchase, right? Then you might purchase this particular shares, let's say market price and the quantity, right? Then let's say you purchase the shares at the price of 100,000 shares. Then let's say 100,000 worth of shares you purchase. Then you are selling this. You are selling, market price now it's 200. Then the quantity is 1,000. You are selling, your gain would be how much? Selling price minus cost, your gain would be 100,000. This is capital gain. Then this gain, it is not subject to capital gain tax. This is exempt, since it is PLC, listed shares, right? So if you have the same transaction here in a private shares, right? Let's say you purchase 100, right? 100 and 1,000 number of shares, 1,000, right? Market price is 100, quantity 1,000 shares, right? You purchase 100,000, you are selling when market price reached to 200, you are selling those shares, all shares, then you will get 100,000 worth of gain, right? This is called capital gain, right? Then this is subject to capital gain tax, right? This is subject to capital gain tax. How to calculate capital gain? So this one into, if you are an individual or Tanipudgalek now, tax at the rate of 10%, right? Then the capital gain tax would be 10,000, right? If it is company, right? If it is company, then the capital gain tax would be here 30%. If it is individual, 10%. If it is company, if you are a company, then 30%. Right? Individual tax 10% order. Individual and others. For company, 30%. Right? Hope this is also clear. Right. Then the second exemption also we discussed. The third exemption. What is that? Third exemption is, third exemption is if you are getting capital gain less than 50,000 or annually less than 600,000. If you are a resident individual, if you are a resident individual, if you are a resident individual, right? Then if your capital gain, right? Capital gain per transaction, එක transaction එකක්, right? That particular transaction, let's say, capital gain per transaction, if it is less than 50,000, right? And total capital gain per year, for year of assessment, less than 600,000. Annual gain එක ලක්ෂ 6ට වඩා අඩුයි නම්, again, it is not subject to capital gain tax. This gazette notification also this explained very well, right? Where the realization of investment asset exceed 50,000, right? Then it is subject to capital gain tax. Realization of investment asset කියන්නේ මොකද? Realization කියන්නේ sales of investment asset. ආයෝජනවත්, right? The sale of asset does not exceed 50,000, but gain made total also exceeds 600. Then it is subject to capital gain tax, right? ලක්ෂ 6ට වඩා වැඩි නම් tax වෙනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් අවශ්‍ය නැහැ, right? So total gain also, if it is a resident individual, very important here, resident individual වලට විතරයි මේක apply වෙන්නේ. non resident වලට apply වෙන්නේ නැහැ, companies වලට apply වෙන්නේ නැහැ. So then in that case, these things also exempt, right? So these two sale of corporate shares exempt, and this also exempt, right? Of this all clear, 3 exemptions, right? Then let's look at the final part, right? Then the tax rate is 10% for individual and others, right? For companies, the tax rate is 30%, right? 30%. Here, let's go to the mind map and discuss the rate, right? So I will use blue color here, right? So let's look at the rate, capital gain tax rate. So rate, we can divide it into 2. For individual, For companies, the rate is 30%. For others in the sense, including individuals, charitable institution, partnership, and so, right? All others, applicable rate is 10%. The partnership pay cut capital gain tax is 10%, right? For the charitable institution, all other, only the company will subject to tax at the rate of 30%. Company income tax rate එක තමයි, right? Corporate income tax rate එක තමයි capital gain tax වලට, right? Hope it's clear to everyone. Right, then due dates, the final part. The payment and return filing due date. When the transaction is happened, we need to submit return, right? Within 1 month. He also explained that, right? Not later than 1 month after date of realization of investment asset. The return also the same, right? So again, here, let's say as example, you are having the transaction March 15, 2022, right? Let's say 2023, right? So the payment and return for capital gain tax. Capital gain tax, payment and return due date. Payment and return due date, right? Capital gain tax payment and return due date. Here, let's say your capital gain transaction, or make a capital gain transaction. Capital gain transaction when, right? It is happening, let's say 15th March 2023, right? Then you need to make the payment, right? Make the payment, right? When here payment on no before 15th April 2023 on no before this date. And also you are required to submit the return also 15 April 2023, right? Very important. This, right? Then if you have, let's say 5-10 capital gain transaction within 1 month, then within 1 month again, one return you can accommodate all these transactions. Let's say January month, you are having few capital gain transaction. Let's say පහක් තියෙනවා. ඒ ඔක්කොම එකතු කරලා then you can submit before end of February, right? Let's say you are having capital gain transaction 10 transaction in the month of April or March, right? Before end of April you can submit the return. Likewise, within 1 month you have to submit the return, right? This is the summary. Let's look at an example here, right? Always you need to look at, very important, when you are calculating the gain, you always need to do the revaluation if it is purchase very history. Let's say as example, how to do the calculation part. As example, let's say Akila is here. Akila is selling his own 10-acre land. Let's say 10-acre land. Let's say 100 acre land to Kasum, right? Kasum, right? Kasum is here, right? Then this land purchase actually not by Akila, from his grandparent, right? By his grandparent, right? So ගොඩක් අතීතයෙන්, right? Let's say very historical pipes, right? Purchase this අකිලගේ සීයගෙත් සීයා, let's say, right? When it's the price very low, right? The purchase price is very low, right? Then how to calculate gain? Akila need to calculate the gain. Then the capital gain, how to calculate? Selling price minus cost. Let's assume that you don't have any additional expenses. The Akila not incurred any additional expenses, right? As example, 0 additional expenses, right? Then the cost, Akila just wondering, this 100 acres land, they purchase, Akila's grandparents, they purchase very low price. Let's say only 100,000. 100-acre land, only for 100,000, right? 100,000, right? Cost only, right? This very old one, right? Then the selling price, now the selling price is 100 million. Let's say selling price is 100 million, right? Let's say selling price is 100 million. The cost is 100,000. Cost is 100,000. Then how to calculate the gain, right? How to calculate the gain? Here, selling price minus cost. 100 million, 100 million minus 100,000, right? Then 99 million, 900 would be the capital gain. Because මේක අකිලගේ 100ගෙත් 100 අරගෙන කියන්නකෝ, right? The old grandparents, they have purchased this, right? Then the only for 100 acres, only for 100,000, maybe in 1980, right? 1980. This purchase date. The purchase date is, let's say they have purchased 1980, right? 1980, Rajinaka, right? So this purchase 1980 for 100,000, right? Right? For 100,000, 100-acre land, right? Then the capital gain would be how much? Capital gain tax. Capital gain would be 99,900,000. Then the capital gain tax would be how much? Then this one into 10%. 9,990,000 would be the capital gain, right? This amount into 10%, right? 9,990,000 would be the capital gain. Is this correct? No. This is wrong, right? If it is purchased in a historical date, right? Right? This is wrong. If it is purchased in a historical date, taxpayer always will penalize. Therefore, then if it is purchased very old time, right? Very old time, then what you have to do is you have to do a revaluation. If it is purchased very old, right? If it's maybe 10, 15, 30, 100 years ago, right? So anyway, you have to do a revaluation. Now you can't take this one because it's the government giving benefit to the taxpayer. You have to do a revaluation as at 30th September 2017, right? Then how to calculate this one again? Then let's say revalid. Akila revalid this one. Akila revalid this one. Then revaluation price is now Akila got 95 million. 95 million. 95 million. Then how to calculate gain? The capital gain would be selling price minus cost. Assume that you don't have any additional cost, right? 100 million minus 95 million, right? Then gain would be, capital gain would be 5 million, right? Capital gain would be 5 million. Then capital gain tax would be 500,000 would be the capital gain tax, right? 500,000 would be the capital gain tax. Right. Then here, the inland revenue or the government giving benefit to taxpayer because of the revaluation. Then if you revalue, then you will get the benefit, right? Then if you purchase, if you have any land, very old purchase date, anyway, what you have to do is you have to revalue, right? If you purchase very recent date, let's say 2020, 2021, 2022, right? No need to do revaluation because it's after the 2017, September 30th, right? Therefore, no revaluation required. Very important, this, right? Right? Because we explained it here as well in the mind map, right? Cost and additional expenses. Here also, we'll go ahead with this. then you always need to look at whether it is purchased prior to 30th September or after 30th September, right? If it's prior to 30th September, do the revaluation and take the value and get the gain on capital gain tax. If it is after, then you can use that particular purchase date, purchase cost, right? No worries, right? Hope it's clear to everyone. හැමෝටම පැහැදිලි. right? ගොඩාක් අතීතයේ ගත්ත ඉඩම් තියෙනවා නම් දැන් විකුණනවා නම් ඒ cost එකට නෙමෙයි capital gain tax එක හදාන්නේ or revalue කරලා 30 September වලට asset එක අරගෙන. right? Here again, right? Let's look at this example. Mr. X purchased a land 3.5 million, right? Mr. X purchased 3.5 million in 2015. Then hold it as investment. Then investment asset. It will become investment asset. Land එක investment asset එකක් වෙනවා. The land and building value, asset value 30th September was 4 million. අන්න value කරලා තියෙනවා 4 million වලට 30 September වලට. මොකද 2015 අරන් තියෙනවා. Because it purchased 2015, then anyway prior to 2017 30 September. Therefore, we have a revaluation. Yes, revaluation amount also given. Right? X sold this asset for 6 million. Then the selling price is here on 1st May 2020 and incurred following additional expenditure, advertisement, right? 100,000, brokerage fee, 60,000, and legal fee, 75,000. Right? How to calculate? Then the selling price, 6 million. The value, the cost, we can take the cost, not 3.5, not 3.5, 4 million, because we are not taking the historical price, right? We have to do the revaluation amount because it is prior to the purchase cost is prior to 30th September. Therefore, we have to take the revaluation recent date at a recent date, right? Cost, yes, we have to consider, right? Then we can deduct advertisement expenses 100,000, brokerage fees, yes, we can deduct, legal fees we can deduct. After deducting all these things, we will get capital gain 1.765 million, right? Then capital gain tax would be this one multiplied by 10%, right? 176,500 would be the capital gain tax. Hope it's clear to everyone, capital gain tax in short. Here, the mind map also, I will upload this one into my community page as well, right? So this mind map I will share with you, and you can also take a screenshot of this, and you may like, if you have any comment, right? If you have any comment, you can post under this video. You can share with your friends and subscribe to my channel as well. Thank you everyone.